Welcome to this tutorial on user authentication with Auth0. Let's start by making an Auth0 account. I've already made one, so I'm just going to log in. I'm going to click Create New Client, name it Instacool, and select Single Page Web App and create it. Now I'll click the Settings panel and select my domain. Going to the graphical console, let's make a new project and call it the same. And select our user model, which is a system model. Click the Configure Auth Provider button, Auth0, and paste in our domain. And now let's do that with the rest of our information. So client ID, and finally client secret. And just like that, we've integrated our app with Auth0's authentication system. So let's go ahead and add some additional fields to our user model. So we'll click Edit Schema, New Field, and let's add name, which is a string. We'll add email address, which is also a string. And finally, let's add email subscription, which will be a Boolean. And this will indicate whether or not the user wants to subscribe to email updates or an email newsletter of some kind. Let's click Done Editing Schema. And now let's make a post model, because our client app will be a small Instagram clone which loads some images in the front page. So we'll call this model post. And let's add an image URL, which is of type string. And finally, a description, which is also a string. Great. Now let's go and click permissions. And we want people who haven't actually signed in or are users to be able to view existing posts, but only authenticated users to create new posts. So under the posts heading, we can see that by default, everyone has access or can do everything. So view, create, edit, and delete. And what we want to do is click Create Node, change this to Authenticated, and click Update Permissions so that only authenticated users can create new nodes or create new posts in this case. Now let's go up and add some new permissions to user, such as Create Node, apply to the whole model, create permission, also view data. And this allows new users to actually sign up for the first time. Okay, now that we've configured this all, let's go ahead and go back to the guide page, click the link to the example on GitHub, and clone or download this to somewhere on a local machine. I'm going to do it to my desktop for now. Now that I've cloned the app, let's cd into it and run npm install for all the dependencies. Now that all the dependencies are installed, let's go ahead and open up our app in a code editor. Okay, so if we open app.js, which is in source and then components, we can see that it has two fields, client ID and domain. So let's go back into our settings panel and select our client ID. And finally our domain. And paste this in. Now let's go ahead and click index.js, which is in the source directory, and fill this in with our GraphQL endpoint. So let's do that by clicking on the endpoint, copying it, and pasting it in. And now let's go ahead and open this up. So we'll run npm start. And we can see that our app has been loaded. And I cheated a while ago. I paused the video and went ahead and added some posts with these images in there so we can see something nice on the front page. Okay, so before we try and sign in, we have a few more things to do. And that is, we need to copy this localhost 3000 into our callback URLs panel in Auth0's page so that we can authenticate from our local machine. Let's save our settings, and now let's try authenticating. Log in with Google. and fill in this panel, which essentially populates the extra fields that we created on our user model a while ago. So I'll just fill this out with a fake email address, and I'll put in my name. Click yes to subscribe and sign up. And I'm redirected back to the front page, and now I'm signed in. I can see this logout button, and I have this new option of creating a new post. So let's try that. And let's try and post it. And we're redirected back, and when we refresh the page, we can see that my new picture appears with the rest of the images. Okay, so what's happened so far is when I logged in the first time and selected, Auth0 responded with a token that was then included on a subsequent request to our GraphQL endpoint. This token is essentially a string of numbers and letters and is included as part of the authorization header. Whenever we make a query to our GraphQL backend with a valid authorization header in our request, GraphQL will treat that request as coming from a user who is signed in. So we can see that if we go back into our GraphQL console and select the user model again, one new user has been created with my name, my email address, email subscription set to true. Going back into the client app, if I click logout and I click login with Auth0 and I select this again, because we make the query with the same token that's already registered with GraphQL, we no longer need to fill in the rest of the form. We can see that in the code over here. So we check to see if in local storage we have the Auth0 ID token, and if we do, we add that to the authorization header in the request. If we make a GraphQL request to our backend without including this authorization header, we will receive a response with the user field of null, and that would indicate that we haven't successfully authenticated. That concludes this tutorial on authenticating with Auth0, but it's worth noting at this point that we could use mutation callback to add our own business logic. For example, like sending off an email automatically whenever a new user subscribes to our app. Check out the rest of our guides for more information. Thanks for watching.